Biotechnology. Our objectives for today include the following. Describe the role of anaerobic respiration in yeast during production of ethanol for biofuel. Describe the role of anaerobic respiration in yeast during bread making. Investigate and describe the use of pectinase in fruit juice production. And investigate and describe the use of biological washing powders that contain enzymes. Biotechnology is the application of biological organisms, systems, or processes to manufacturing and service industries. Usually, we only use this term when microorganisms are involved or when plants or animals are used to produce something other than food. First in our list, making ethanol for biofuel. In a different chapter of the book, we have seen that we have the need to reduce our use of fossil fuel. And one of the best alternatives that is available to us is to use plants to provide sugar, which yeast can then break down through the process of anaerobic respiration as a form of fermentation. Microorganisms that bring about fermentation are using the chemical reaction to produce energy which they need for their living processes. Looking at the image in here, you could see the yeast under a microscope. This yeast is the species of Saccharomyces cerevisiae, and this is the yeast used for creating biofuels. The glucose that is then required to proceed with the fermentation is taken from either maize or sugarcane. Maize, which is a kind of corn, would need a treatment first before it can be exposed to the yeast. It will be treated with an amylase enzyme, which will help break down the starch into glucose. Sugarcane, on the other hand, does not need any help from an enzyme since most of its energy is stored as sucrose. After which, yeast is then added and allowed to use the glucose in anaerobic respiration. And since this is under anaerobic respiration, the vials or the containers that are used are designed to exclude oxygen to maintain this process from going on. An optimum pH and temperature are maintained for the yeast being cultured. Ethanol that is produced is actually the waste product of this whole process through anaerobic respiration. This one is then extracted from the mixture by distillation. Benefits. Biofuels are used in different countries as a renewable source of energy for motor cars in order to replace non-renewable petrol. It is also mentioned that it has the ability to reduce the amount of carbon dioxide that we add to the atmosphere. Although carbon dioxide is produced when biofuel is burnt in the process of usage, we have to remember that plants use carbon dioxide in the process of photosynthesis, and they take all these carbon dioxide in order to produce their food. On the other hand, usage of fossil fuel requires us to burn them, thus emitting carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. And this carbon dioxide remains in the atmosphere for millions of years, increasing the global warming phenomenon. Of course, this also comes with drawback. First one is monoculture. This is because we have to plant a lot of corn in a piece of land or in a big area of land in order to maintain the supply chain, and that one can also deplete the amount of nutrients found in the soil. If you like baking or is fond of eating bread, then this biotechnology is for you. Bread making includes flour, which is actually made up of starch and protein. The protein that is found in your bread is the stretchy gluten. Although gluten provides no nutritional value, it can be found hiding in lots of foods. Bakers discovered they could bind mixtures with flour containing gluten and make bread airy and light. Another important ingredient is known as yeast. If you go to the supermarket, There are actually different types of yeast depending on what you want to do with it. There is a brewing yeast that is used for creating beer, but for this situation that we have, we are talking about baker's yeast, which is either fresh, it could be an activated yeast, or instant yeast as labeled in the supermarket. Yeast is typically activated with the help of water and sugar. This mixture is then added to flour to make a dough. And then this would be the time wherein you would be working your muscles, kneading the dough, and after probably 8 minutes, you would be letting this dough rest in order to allow the yeast to work to their full potential. As it rests, the dough will be rising because the yeast is releasing carbon dioxide, which gets trapped in the dough. This later on will be released when you bake it in the oven. And these are also the circular pockets that you would be noticing when you eat the bread. When the dough is cooked, the high temperature kills the yeast and any ethanol formed because of anaerobic respiration evaporates. Air spaces are left where the carbon dioxide was trapped, and this gives the bread a light texture. Oh my gosh, I'm craving bread right now. Are you? If we have food, then we must talk about beverage too. It's undeniable that it's difficult to squeeze fruit like orange and lemon in the morning because we don't have energy. But this can be prevented by buying a fruit juice from the supermarket. Supermarket fruit juice are created with the help of pectinase, which is an enzyme that helps break down the tissue known as pectin. Pectin is a substance which helps to stick plant cells together. Other than releasing sugars in a solution from the fruit as they squeeze it, it also makes the liquid extract transparent or more clarified. Since this one is using enzyme, it'll be faster if it is done in warmer conditions than in cold conditions because of enzyme activity. Using detergent alone is less effective than biological washing powders that contain enzymes. They contain different ranges and types of enzyme. For example, we have here listed amylases for starch, proteases for protein and protein stains. We have lipases as well to digest fat and remove fatty and greasy stain from your clothing. These are broken down into their smaller units. For example, for protein, they are broken down into amino acids, and this makes it easier for these molecules to leave the clothes and dissolve in the water. These biological washing powders work better in a relatively low temperature, but if accidentally you place them in a very high temperature, this will effectively denature the enzymes, making them ineffective and not useful at all. Is there a chance for these washing powders to destroy our skin? The answer to that is no, that would be a very little possibility since these washing powders or enzymes are packed into very small capsules, microscopic in fact, and they can only break upon water contact.